Hey guys, Mike here. So another jam-packed video for you, and we're going to get into the charts, which of course, are going to show us whether or not we should be expecting a pullback this week, or we're going to continue this insane rally up what we've had the last couple of days. And understand, I'm sure most of you have heard, which is what I'll base a lot of this on, is that the Republicans and Democrats did come up with an agreement on the debt ceiling, right, in principle. And now they got to do the fun part of getting their people to vote on it to push it through. And so for those who don't know American politics, just understand there's little different groups within Congress here, right? Now got their little names and stuff. And so whether it's the Freedom Caucus or whatever, whoever you want to name in there's a bunch of them. And so now this is where you get to see how many of these groups try to do what they call power grabs, where they realize, wait a minute, without our votes, they can't push this through if there's enough of them. So now we get to get some of the stuff we want, which have nothing to do with the debt ceiling, by the way, but some of the stuff they want in order to get their vote, right? This happens on every major bill and stuff. So we'll see if it's a smooth transition come out. I think they're going to vote on Tuesday because Monday, obviously, is recognized as the holiday and stuff. So they'll be probably on vacation, which is where they're at now. And so we'll see if they do it Tuesday and it's nice and smooth. And we'll also see, is this a sell the news event for the stock market, or is this going to be more fuel on the fire for the stock market? That's what we got to see. And so in this market, it's kind of hard to tell, right, sometimes. But I will say, starting off with a couple of things here, is one, before I get into the charts, China right now is a hot mess, right? I mean, the stocks, and this is one of those alternatives where a lot of people are piling their money and started pulling it out. It raised all its gains from this year, right? And if you look right here, this is the one, let me get your input on this. I don't see how this gets fixed. And I'll tell you why this is a big deal and you need to know this kind of stuff, this is projections come out, not too long ago here, about China's population. And by 2050, which seems a long way away, but when you think about it, it literally is only 27 years away, almost a quarter of their population will be older than 70 years old. And I don't know if you can see to the right is the world excluding China and then China, right? And understand the rest of the world, only 10% on average of their population will be over 70. So they're 2.5 times that, right? And the reason why this is a really big deal, when you look at it, if we scroll through this,
birth rate keeps dropping, people keep living older, and your column eventually inverts into an open pyramid, upside down. And now you no longer have children, you no longer have a replacement generation at all. And there aren't enough people in their 20s and 30s to buy everything. And there aren't enough people in their 40s and 50s to pay for the retirees. So this decade was always going to be the decade that most of the advanced world moves into mass retirement and the economic model collapses. And next decade was always going to be the decade that happened to the developing world. And we find out recently that the Chinese have jumped the ship, and this is their last decade too. So all of the globalized connections and consumptions that create the world we know, we are at the end of it.
So when you're saying that China has 10 years to go,
at most.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we now know that they've lied about their population statistics, and they overcounted their population by over 100 million people, all of whom would have been born since the one-child policy was adopted. So this is one of those places where they've got more people in their 60s and their 50s and their 40s and their 30s and their 20s.
And the reason why this is a really big deal is because they're the second largest economy in the world, projected to be number one by like 7 years, I believe it is. Right. And so, and of course, why they had this problem, because they had the one child policy. They had the policy where they didn't want female babies, obviously, because females have other children. And so it's like a whole generation of men I've read that there's just too many of them versus women, so they don't have a mate. Right. And it's like, how do you fix that? Because the reason why it's a big deal is because look at the big conglomerate companies that are holding up our market. Right. Apple. Do you realize how much revenue they do in China? Tesla. Right. You know how much revenue they do in China. Right. And so you got all these companies that do massive amounts of revenue over there. Nike's another one. And so, and there's just many. But again, and I've showed you this when it comes to our population problem, right? When it comes to our workforce population problem, which I've showed you, is why is that a big deal? Because as you get older, and anybody that's probably over 65 can attest to this, you're not expanding your life anymore. You're actually shrinking down. You're trying to downsize stuff. You're getting rid of stuff. You don't need a 4-bedroom house anymore. You don't need 3 cars, right? And you're trying to basically spend less because a lot of people like to pass on what they have to their children. And there's just no reason, right? You don't eat as much. You don't worry about, again, having 3 or 4 houses or having a gigantic house or moving year after year after year. Not at all, right? And it's going to be no different in China, right? And so when you look at that, that's a problem. All right, and I know that seems a long way away, but it's not. That's not a long way away at all when you really think about it in perspective. And so, again, I don't know how you fix that problem. You know, I mean, here in America, what's happening? You have every generation, right, having less and less children, and then having them later on in life if they do have them, right, which is what's creating a problem with our workforce now. And so, which, yes, AI will help, and robotics and things like that will help in that area. So maybe that's what picks up the slack. But let me know in the comments, you know, what you think about that, because, yeah, there's going to be an effect. It's going to happen. You know, I'm just curious to see, you know, I don't know how you fix it. That's what I'm looking at. I just don't know how you fix it. You can keep ignoring it, I guess, but I don't know how you fix it, because unlike America, China is not one of those countries that I know of that has a huge influx of immigrants coming in there, right? Trying to fly and move over there and all that stuff and start a life over there. Maybe there is, but I just don't see it. But, you know, the other thing is, I know a lot of people are saying, well, I don't understand how our stock market keeps going up. Well, we're not the only ones. You got Germany here who hit an all-time high like a week ago, right? While at the same time, their market, right here, as you can see, is actually in a technical recession. And so, and we've gone through this before, we had 2 negative quarters of GDP as well. And when you look at it, there's no way anybody can really realistically say, oh yeah, we were in a recession, because come on, give me a break. And I mean, we were spending like crazy, the unemployment rates, almost nothing. And so, you know, they are seeing the same thing, right? That shows the business cycles all over the place. Look at Japan stocks. I mean, this is less than 2 weeks ago, right? Not seeing this high since 1999. And before we continue, guys, if you're getting anything out of this, please hit that like, subscribe button. I really appreciate it. And think about sharing the video. And if you like the content, think about subscribing. And so it's not just here where you're seeing, you know, much higher inflation than usual. Yeah, you got all these indicators saying there's going to be a recession, yet the stock markets, or just the stocks in general, especially tech, are just flying off the shelves, right? And so it's not just here, it is in other countries as well. I believe the European like tech index or whatever, same thing, hitting all-time highs. Everything else kind of maybe lagging behind. But again, a lot of the other stuff lagging behind are what is actually affected by these high interest rates and things like that, and high inflation. And so, you know, we're not, I guess in a way, our country doesn't have the only consumer that's holding up, right? But also those countries, especially Japan, has a lot of money coming in from America and other countries going into their stocks and stuff, right? I mean, that was when Warren Buffett come out and said he's going to expand his exposure, and a lot of people followed right along with him. So, you know, not just here that's happening. Now, when you look at it, I always like to keep things in perspective on this channel. You can see here's the S&P 500, right? Trying to break out of that channel. It's barely out of it now, but here's what's crazy. Even with these massive moves last week, the index was actually up 0.3%. What a huge move, right? I mean, it's amazing after all those big days and things like that. Of course, what happened? We had the big moves down, right? So not up very much. And then you got the NVDA composite, right, which holds a whole boatload of stocks, a lot more than the Qs. Well, that right there, it's up 2.5%, right? So a lot more because it has tech. But again, 2.5%. The Qs were up 3.5% last week, right? Then you look at, you know, when I'm looking at this as a big perspective, the NASDAQ Composite Index, you can see it's very close right there to taking out those August highs right there, okay? Remember, the Qs have already done that. But here's the NASDAQ Composite trying to do that, and it's only, 1% away. And so it makes more sense to me, though, when you look at the RSI, it's just a composite. It doesn't go, once it hits overbought, it usually sells off, right? And so, you know, when you look at that, we're hitting it again, obviously. So to me, you know, pulling out and actually taking a look at this right here, as I'll show you multiple indications of where this has happened, and this is a, you know, daily, so I'm not talking about 20% drop or nothing, right? You know, a realistic 4 to 7% move down, right? Which means the stocks will be moving more than that. But, you know, it makes sense to me, as I get my little trusty arrow right here, to move up, get rejected at first off of that August high, and then pull back down, and then pull a support resistance flip around the 12,588 area, right? And so turn that into support and then start to proceed up. Like that would make a lot more sense to me. Now, again, a lot of this depends on how the market's going to digest the whole debt ceiling stuff. And then, of course, if this AI bonanza continues and people just keep piling in blindly to these stocks, that's a whole different story, right? Now, look at Amazon. Here we go. Finally, it reached up, made it into the supply zone up here. You can see it's rejected multiple times. And again, starting to go into overbought territory. Would it make sense for it to do a nice pullback? Yeah, probably around maybe to the 116 to 118 area would make sense if that were the case. I mean, you can see it multiple times here. And so, and then before it proceeds to move back up, So keep that in mind. Again, another one of the big mega cap stocks has had a big move up over the last just few weeks here, especially the month of May. Now, NVIDIA, of course, is off the charts, right? I mean, look at this. RSI up there around 85 on the daily. That MACD, just exploding, right? And so huge gap below it. And, the hourly, look at that MACD at the bottom. Man, that is screaming. We want to roll over, right? Look at that, still overbought like crazy. Again, a lot of people are trying to short it, which is probably why it's not going down right now. And I found this meme right here, which I found was funny. And this is the wife is saying, "Babe, please stop shorting NVIDIA. It's not going down. Please stop. This is our rent money." And of course, he's saying, "Nope, it's a double top. It's a double top. It's going to happen, right?" So they're holding in there. But, it already surpassed that double top I was talking about. So it's kind of an old meme. But, one thing I will tell short sellers is check this out on the weekly. Look at where the RSI is at right now. In the last basically 3 times we hit up in this area, we actually did get a sell-off, right? And so keep that in mind. Eventually, gravity does take hold for sure, and people say, okay, I'll start taking profit. And all you need is a little bit of drop to where, people start trying to sell out. I'll go start getting in the game and everything and taking profit, and then it'll find a support level and start bouncing back up. Eventually, that's going to happen. It's hard to predict when you got euphoria in the market when it comes to this. Now, Apple, of course, the big daddy of them all right here, obviously hit that resistance line up above we had talked about. That was going to be a double top. That did not play out, by the way, because it ended up coming down. And look how many times at that level where the gap is down there, that box, it has bounced now, right? It just refuses to go into that gap. And so, again, it really depends on if money starts flowing out of Apple, because it's not really an AI play, so to speak, like the other ones are. You don't really talk about it like that. And so if some money, they start taking profit right here, because if that ends up being, I guess you can call it a triple top if you want to or whatever, or a short-term double top. But if it gets rejected there again and starts heading down and starts to fill that gap, yeah, people will definitely start rotating out into these crazy AI stocks for sure. I mean, that definitely can happen. Or just rotate over into Microsoft. And so, again, Microsoft sitting there 5% away from an all-time high. That's right, another stock getting ready to set an all-time high. And will it reject? It makes sense. I mean, let's be honest about it. I mean, it's starting to get overstretched above that 200 and stuff. And so it makes sense for it to come back down, at least fill one gap, and then get around that's a demand area there and start to move back up, right? And you can see here it is. This ain't like an AI type stock where it can get overbought for like weeks on end, right? Like NVIDIA does. And so it's overbought. And so we'll see if we get that slight pullback, maybe fill that small gap right there, bounce off 313, and then proceed to start heading higher, okay? And it is one of those stocks that does respect its 200. So we'll see on that one. Now, Google, obviously, huge move up on this AI push and everything. So it wasn't on like, their revenues increasing like crazy. Again, it's in that golden pocket. That's what it demands on. It's in that golden pocket on the fib levels. I told you it's not a stock that's going to stay overbought for long, okay? And so that's why you'll see, it wouldn't surprise me a bit to get a pullback and before you get a push up. Tesla, on the other hand, obviously can stay overbought for a long time, but that's not even there, right, on the daily. And so, again, this one, what stopped it more than anything was that 200-day moving average, which it hadn't really been above since like a year ago, maybe more than a year ago. And you can see it got right up there, tapped it, and then sold off. Also, you got that trend line coming down, which has been good resistance for us. If it can break through the 200 and that trend line, that gap is definitely going to get filled. I told you there are people predicting at least like 210 to 230, some even higher on this right here. And once Tesla gets moving, we know how it is. And so you see a whole lot of call buying coming in for this one. We'll see if it can continue up next week. Keep an eye on that. If not, you got great support levels at 165, 176, looks like 90-ish area right there. And so again, it is in a high supply zone, so we'll see if it can break through that. Now, earnings, okay, Monday nothing really is going to change because obviously the market's closed anyway. Tuesday I don't see anything on here, but Wednesday, that's when you're going to have some where people will definitely pay attention to, right? You have advanced auto parts, they usually do really well, but then after hours, CrowdStrike, Salesforce, C3AI guarantees a boatload of calls bought on that one. Okta, Chewy, right? Nordstrom's a retailer. Some of them do good, some of them don't. And then, of course, Thursday, you end up with more retailers. Dollar General, we'll see. Because remember, dollar stores aren't really dollar stores anymore because of inflation. I don't know if you've been in one, but hardly anything's a dollar anymore, right? Then you got Macy's. And then, of course, looking over, you got, I think it's Broadcom right here. This one right here, I think it's the one, it's just been going bananas and stuff as far as like how much it's moved up before earnings. So again, Lululemon, which I'll tell you a story about them in just a second, I read today, which is just ludicrous. ChargePoint still around, Sentinel-1, another basically high beta play. I'm sure people will be buying calls on, just try to play it up or whatever. And then, of course, looking at the economic data, Tuesday we'll start out. Whole lot of real estate sector data is going to be coming up and stuff. Dallas Fed Manufacturing Index, that people will be paying attention to it. Nothing's going to change the market though, right? Again, a whole lot of mortgage stuff. And then we'll have Chicago PMI, then the JOLTS job report, which the Fed likes to listen to. Dallas Fed Services Index, I think that's the more important to pay attention to because that's the part of the economy they can't seem to get their heads wrapped around. Then you have a whole lot of Fed speakers, and let's see what kind of narrative they're trying to paint here, right? Let's see if they're still on the fence about a rate hike or not. All right, then we'll have next day continuous jobless claims, initial jobless claims. That's going to be something people are going to be paying attention to. The S&P Global Manufacturing, that's going to be another one people are going to be paying attention to. And if you just look at what they're expecting, especially on the jobless claims, they're expecting to go up, but guess what keeps happening? They keep revising those numbers down. And so the market just stays hot, right? And you have a whole lot of ISM manufacturing data coming out. Again, as it finally bottomed out because it's been tanking like crazy. At some point in time, it kind of has to, right? And then on June 2nd, you have a boatload of data coming out about basically us, right? And how this job market is looking. So you have, are we earning more? Questions yes or no, right? Our averagely week hours we're working, manufacturing payrolls, non-farm payrolls private, participation rate, and then there's the unemployment rate. Does it finally tick up, right? It's at 3.4%. Can it possibly go any lower? The answer is I would think not, but let me know what you think in the comments. The story I heard about Lululemon today, it came out yesterday, I think it was, in Georgia. They fired 2 employees because they called the cops during, it wasn't a robbery, but people were shoplifting. And supposedly, this is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. Maybe there's a reason for it. Maybe you know what it is. But they have a policy just when people steal, just let them go. Write up a report, scan the code and everything. That's it. But they fired these 2 employees because they called 911 after seeing the people shoplifting. And I guess they'd done it multiple times before, the shoplifting folks. And so I'm like, I'm not sure what kind of country we're going into, but I guess, okay. But then, of course, like somebody said, well, let's be real about it. I mean, Lululemon already commits highway robbery with the amount of money they charge people for those warm-up pants and stuff. I can't believe people pay $150 or whatever it is for this crazy amount. But, you do you. But no, I mean, so I thought that was kind of funny and interesting. Let me know what you think about that in the comments. But I guess it shouldn't surprise me. That's some companies' policies. I don't get that. But, hey, if you're looking to, take a $150 pair of warm-up pants or whatever it is, I guess Lululemon will just let you do it and you can walk right out with it. I don't know what kind of message you're sending to customers when you make that your policy and you fire employees for trying to do the right thing, but that's where we're at in the world. So anyway, I hope you got something out of it, guys. Hit that like and subscribe button. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate all your positive feedback from yesterday's video. Greatly appreciate it. Greatly appreciate all you guys. I was going to tell you, Patreon rolled out a new policy last week, and I forgot to say this, where you can actually do finally 7-day free trial now when you sign up for stuff, and you won't be charged anything. If you don't like it, you just cancel. So if you want to sign up for one of the memberships, become a part of the group, right down there in the comments, you can hit it. Less than the McDonald's combo. And if you don't like it, you cancel after 7 days and you got nothing to lose. So anyway, just want to let you know, guys, know that and stuff. So have a good one, and I'll see you tomorrow, okay?